Yeah, in fact, good evening, one and all.
The picture on your
The third series of Publish and Flourish. This is about learning research methodology, and publication of your work. First was in 2019, and Dr. Sabyasachi was there as our chief guest when it was organized at Nagpur, along with VOS and OSN.
I think in the last couple of
We have with us Dr. Sabyasachi Sengupta, who is associate editor of IGO, prolific VR surgeon. He runs Sengupta Research Academy, and he has numerous publications to his credit. Second speaker is Dr. Sunil Morekar, who is a consultant Global Hospital, is committee member of Eye Health Committee ICO, Diabetic Eye Care Committee ICO. He was ex-editor of Indian Journal of Ophthalmology. He's author International Diabetic Eye Care Guidelines. He's formulated those guidelines and is ethics expert database member, Global Ethics Observatory of UNESCO France. He's a WHO reviewer and he has great experience in publication. We have Dr. Parishit Gokte, who is a president of MOS. He's a prolific cataract surgeon, and he has to his credit 112 PubMed publications, 379 national and 103
Hello, sir.
international. Yes.
Hello.
Yes.
Sir, bola.
Thoda sir to mute, please.
Gokte's Eye Clinic. He is a medical director of Atharva Netralaya and Research Private Limited, Pune. He is a member scientific committee of AIOS, secretary of International Society of Geographics and Epidemiologic Ophthalmology. Dr. Viral Shah, my dear colleague, who is a chairman scientific committee of Vidarbha Ophthalmic Society, consultant at Niyakshi Eye Hospital, vast experience in guiding students and research. This is the sequence of talks. I will omit the first talk and straight away go to data collection tools and analysis. The second talk will be by Dr. Viral Shah. Third will be by Dr. Parishit Gokte, and fourth will be myself, and Dr. Morekar will be a last batsman because he wants a lot of time and don't want any interruption. So Dr. Sabyasachi.
Sir, can I finish? I have got one more talk in the other hall, sir. Can I go first? Okay. Sabyasachi, sir? Yeah, Dr. Sengupta?
Yeah, please.
Sir, Joshi, sir, can I get over with
Yeah.
So I will join and later after giving that.
Sabyasachi, sir, he's got talk in other hall. So can we complete his talk?
I have no other choice, so that's fine.
Sir, thank you so much, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank
I
you.
will start sharing my screen now. So thank you so much. At the outset, I would like to thank Maharashtra Ophthalmic Society, Scientific Chairperson, Dr. Ragini Madam, and the whole scientific committee, Dr. Rajesh Joshi sir, for giving me this opportunity. So my talk will be selecting the right journal for your article. So a disclaimer at the outset, this presentation is only for new authors who are writing their first or second paper and who are looking for systematic method for finding the right journal for their maiden publication, and not for experts or veterans like my co-faculty, Dr. Sabyasachi, Dr. Parishit, Dr. Rajesh Joshi, and Dr. Morekar sir. So how do you choose a journal? Your guide may choose for you, your seniors may suggest it to you, or you can choose the basis on the basis of journals that you follow particularly. But there is a systematic approach which you can go ahead with if you want more plausible options and better chances of acceptance of your publication. There is an easier. So what is the problem in choosing the right journal? Because of our digital explosion and open access to databases, vast amount of knowledge is now available to us. There are more than 84,000 academic and peer-reviewed English language journals with more than 30,000 related to medicine and health. So there are the good journals, the bad journals, and the ugly journals. It is important for us to sift through them. There are maybe predatory or pseudo journals, and there are credible and quality journals. So what are predatory journals? According to ICMJE, the following are the warning flags for your that should ring warning bell in your mind. So they accept all the publications. They charge for publications. They don't inform about charges upfront. They falsely claim to be peer-reviewed. Names they are very similar or sounding similar to established journals. There is no detection policy, and their varied topics are mixed with each other. So criteria for evaluating a journal: you must look for the scientific rigor of the journal, the editorial quality, the peer review process it follows, the ethics of the journal, editorial board members, journal reputation and its business model, authors' rights and copyrights, indexing status, impact factor, journal operations and archival practices, and email solicitations. Scientific rigor is the backbone and the key indicator of a journal quality. So if you go through the journal's past issues, you will understand what is the research methodology and designs they follow, and what are the references, and whether they use plagiarism check softwares or something like that. Only they use the recognized guidelines for reporting of research, which helps to ensure the quality of scientific research and enhances the replicability of the research. Registration of clinical trials before the time of first patient enrollment, and transparency of journal practices and policies. Editorial quality is noted, should be noted. Basic English they use, and the punctuation, grammars, all that. Lack of clarity and cohesiveness in writing, editorials, and titles and abstracts can also be revealing for the editorial quality. Peer review process. Transparency as to the peer review process is a benchmark of a journal quality. A reputable journal will fully disclose the peer review process, including the criteria which they use for review, selections of reviewers, type of peer review, timeframes for review, and how the peer review process is handled by the editorial board. Additional details such as conflict of interest, confidentiality, and other ethical standards for peer review should also be available. Ethics. Reputable journal endorse guidelines and best practices for publishers such as ICMJE, COPE, and World Association of Medical Editors. It reveals valuable insight as to the quality of journals. The editorial board members should be established experts in the field related to the aim and scope of journal, affiliated with well-known institutions, and they should hold appropriate academic credentials. Their contact information should be freely available. Another clue should be the editorials which are authored by editor-in-chief and editorial board. Journal reputation in its business model, the reputation of the journal, the publisher who is publishing the journal, the societal organization that sponsors the journal, and aim and scope, mission statement, they all give credibility to the journal. The aim and scope of should be clearly stated, and other information such as mission statement or sponsoring organization help to assess the reputation of the journal. Authors' rights and copyrights. The journal policy as to the author's right and copyright is another benchmark. Copyright is a bundle of rights that allows authors to use, disseminate, display, or modify the work in any medium. If a journal does not allow for compliance with public access mandates, author will need to consider another journal. Journals may also stipulate various uses based on the version of the work, and transparency should be there. Indexing status. Authors want their research to be discoverable and read by others. A quality journal will be indexed by major bibliographic and citation database such as Medline, Elsevier, Scopus, Embase. Many are there online, but basically these are usually used. Medline is produced by NLM, National Library of Medicine. Index journals are considered to be premier journal in the biomedicine field, and many authors rely on Medline indexing status as a strong indicator of quality journal. It is freely available citation database with no subscription required, so any author can check for indexing status. PubMed, Medline, and PMC. You must differentiate between all these different entities. PubMed is a resource that aggregates citations from Medline, PMC, and other resources from the NCBI bookshelf. whereas PMC is a free archive of full text journal articles, and Medline is a journal citation database from NLM. Impact factor scores, the journal citation reports JCR impact factor score developed in 1960s has evolved over the years to be associated with identifying high impact journals for publication. Other journal impact scores have been used. The calculations are based on the number of citations within a specific time frame garnered by the publication for the journal. Journal operations and archival practices. Journal operations, they include, they should use platforms such as Portico or Desktop. They must have a DOI, digital object identifier, which should be assigned to all the articles, and an ISSN number is assigned to the journal and publication schedule. Irregular publication schedule, excessive advertising, missing or sporadic issues are indicative of unstable journal management. Aim and scope, editorial board instructions for the author, and journal contact information should be easily available. Email solicitation, beware of journals which send emails for soliciting various abstracts and manuscripts. They are very generic and vaguely worded emails, and you should be wary of them. There are many giveaways which you can decipher from their email, whether it is a predatory journal or a quality journal. So conclusion, there is no reliable list of good versus bad journals. Author must begin their list of potential journals by considering the journal they use for their own research on clinical practice. Potential journals include journals from publications that authors cite in their research, journals they review for, and journals associated with professional organizations. Mentors and colleagues may also be able to provide insight as to which journals are regarded as relevant for an area of research or are recommended for tenure. Consultation with mentors and colleagues can be especially important for early career authors and authors tackling a research topic outside their primary field. Thank you. Thank you so much. This was in short. I tried to recap in 8 minutes that were given to me. Obviously, the topic is very vast, and we have got such stalwarts with us who can throw more light during the panel discussion. So thank you, Rajesh Joshi sir, for the opportunity. Thank you, Sabyasachi sir, Parikshit sir, and Morekar sir.
Thank you, Viral. In fact, it's important to find out indexing of the journal, particularly when the promotion is decided on it. Now MCI, nowadays it's called as NMC, usually update their list of indexing. So if they want PubMed, that should be there. Otherwise, if you go on publishing in non-PubMed index journal, then there is always a problem, particularly for promotion purpose. And apart from that, subject journal is very important. If you are publishing in other journals, it will not carry any meaning for promotion. Anyway, thank you, Viral. Now next, Dr. Sabyasachi Sengupta on data analysis and tools for data collection.
Thank you, Dr. Joshi, for this opportunity, and thanks to MOS for this kind invitation to talk to you a little bit about data analytics in clinical research. So I'm Dr. Sabyasachi Sengupta, and I am primarily a veterinary surgeon practicing in Mumbai. So like Viral told us about choice of journals, I think it's very important to understand basics of biostatistics, because a lot of the times the huge difference between getting into a major journal, say like JAMA Ophthalmology, or say second tier journal is biostatistics, and you could crash land, like you're seeing in this, simply because the statistics are not in place. So so let's try and simplify this in the next 8 minutes. So there are basic building blocks for pretty much everything that there is to study. Say atoms and molecules in material sciences. Medical sciences are based on cells, right? So we study about cells in first year of medicine in physiology. The basic building blocks for biostatistics are called variables. Unfortunately, we don't study about variables in first year of medicine, though we should, but unfortunately, that's not part of our system, and hence we crash land more than succeed. So overall, statistics is the science of collecting data, describing data, analyzing data, interpreting and drawing conclusions from data, and predicting future events. And this predicting future events is coming into fore more and more, because a lot of artificial intelligence is coming in, and it is helping us predict, future outcomes. Say, who is at risk for getting a stroke, or who's at risk for getting blindness due to diabetes. So a lot of these, statistical models are actually helping us predict future events. When is the market going to crash? Which stock is going to go up? All of this is really based on statistical modeling. So statistics is really all around us, though we don't probably realize this. And it helps us organize, understand, and make sense of all the data that is coming out. So some basic terminology is where data means observation that come from an experiment. A variable is each set of observations in the data set, or every column in the Excel sheet is is data. For example, age, gender, BCVA, OCT, thickness, or number of injections, etc. So all of these are nothing but data. So data really of two types. One is a continuous, or variables are mainly of two types. One is a continuous, and other is a categorical variables. So we'll see what these are in some examples. So continuous variables, also called as quantitative variables, are a variable that can take on many different values, and in theory can range anywhere between the lowest and the highest points on the measurement scale, and they always have a unit to it. Say for example, age is in years, BCVA is in logmar, say intraocular pressure is in millimeters of mercury. So these are all examples of continuous variables. And categorical variables are also called as qualitative variables, where things are grouped together with some common property, and the number of groups, number of members in each group are recorded. So categorical variable can have only a limited number of values. For example, gender, it can be only male or female. Say success, depending on how you define it, is yes or no. Type of macular hole closure is type 1 or type 2, things like that. So say type of injury could be open globe versus closed globe, right? So these are examples of categorical variables. Once we know these, we go ahead and describe the variables. So continuous variables are described in terms of their measures of central tendency and the measure of spreads. There are three measures of central tendency, that is mean, median, and mode. And there are three measures of spread, that is range or interquartile range, variance, and standard deviation. So really the rule is, when you're looking at a continuous variable, one measure of central tendency should be accompanied with one measure of spread. So mean is always presented with standard deviation, and median is always presented with an interquartile range. And the best way to show this graphically is a box and whisker plot. So this is how a box and whisker plot looks, where the central box is what I'm talking about. The central line is called the 50th percentile. The box edges are the 25th and the 75th percentile. The upper and lower bound are the 90th and the 10th percentile. And anything on either side of these whiskers are called outliers. So this is how a continuous variable is described. Looking at categorical variables, they are just proportions or percentages. So percentage of subjects with 15-letter gain in vision, or percentage of patients with mild, moderate, or severe diabetic retinopathy in a study population. These are examples of categorical variables, and they are best shown graphically in terms of bar diagrams. So this is one example that we used to look at the causes of enucleation at a tertiary institute in India across 15 years. So, that is how we describe variables. When we look at analyzing variables, that is playing with one variable, more than one variable at a time, that is called analytic statistics. What we can do is, very simply classifying, we can classify them in terms of differences between variables, correlations between variables, and association between variables. So when we're looking at differences between a continuous variable, and then there are two groups, say age in group A versus age in group B, and it is that age is normally distributed, we use the student t-test. And if it is not normally distributed, we use the Wilcoxon-Rank sum test. So it is easy enough. And when we are looking at differentiating between a categorical variable, say, percentage of men in group A versus percentage of men in group B, we use the chi-square test. And say examples is difference in mean OCT thickness in eyes with DME treated with Avastin versus IVTA. Say the dependent or the outcome variable is OCT thickness. Now that is a continuous variable, that's in microns. And then test to be used, therefore, is the student t-test or the Wilcoxon-Rank sum test. And this is straight from a journal, where it says that 6-month follow-up, the mean IOP in the drug A was significantly lesser than that in the drug B, and it's 11.6 and 15.2, P is equal to 0.03. And so the test used here is the student t-test. If there are more than two groups, then we use in a continuous variable, we use the ANOVA test. And if there are more than two groups in a categorical variable, we still continue to use the chi-square test, or CAT is for chi. Categorical variables is chi-square test. We don't have enough time to look at correlations between variables, but I thought we'll quickly look at how do you do association between variables. So associations really can, the question to ask is, can a particular variable, a set of variables, predict the value of another variable? So the quintessential example we use in ophthalmology is the SRK formula, where IOL power can be calculated based on the keratometry and the axial length, right? So this is an example of an association, and this is nothing but linear regression. So association is nothing but regression. It helps to determine value of one variable when the value of another variable or variables is known. And the concept of adjustment and confounders is there. That is, when many independent variables influence the value of the dependent variable, which are the associates which are real, and which are the ones which are spurious, can actually be done using regression analysis. There are two types, mainly univariate and multivariate regression, where in univariate we look at one independent variable and one dependent variable at a time, so there is no adjustment. And in multivariable regression, as the name suggests, multivariable, there are more than one independent variables, and there is one, of course, one dependent variable, and adjustments can be done. The types of regressions are mainly four types based on the outcome variable. If it's a continuous variable, the outcome, the regression we use is linear regression. If it's a categorical variable, we use logistic regression. If it's counts data, which is commonly used now in terms of, how many steps you have walked in a day and things like that, we use something called Poisson regression. And the last is survival data. Say in ophthalmology, we use it commonly for trabeculectomy studies, where you look at failure rates, or, traditionally it has been used for cancer chemotherapy and 5-year survival rates. So when time is sort of important in the outcome, we use Cox proportional hazards modeling. When used when outcome variable is, the logistic regression is the commonest type of regression it is used. And, we use it when the outcome is a categorical and binomial. And it is based on likelihood ratios, and outcomes are in terms of odds ratios. This is different from risk ratios. We don't have a lot of time to go into details of these, but generally you should remember that logistic regression is a commonly used one, and odds ratios are the ones which come out of that. So take home message overall is to determine the type of each variable. Then you do descriptive statistics, that is describe the variable well, then do analytic statistics, that is differences, correlations, and regressions, and then write your results in terms of text, graphs, and figures. So this is my website. If you want to learn some of this, you can go to Senvitas Research Academy. There are a lot of learning lectures on especially on biostatistics. There is a whole module on this. So a lot of other things that you can learn, and there are interesting blogs like p-values, regression analysis that I'm talking about, and odds ratios, and a lot of other resources that you can actually utilize. So thank you very much. I'm happy to take questions now or later.
Thank you so much, sir. Every time I listen to you, I get something new. That is the thing. That is the thing, and you made it so simple. In fact, this is the most neglected topic as far as epidemiology is concerned. Whenever I tell my student to have some thesis or go to statistician, they feel that there is nothing in it, or they feel for what we are here. That is the thing. But if you go into it, you find it that it's very easy, and once you learn it, then you really review the article properly. Now, next speaker is Dr. Parikshit Gokte, and his topic is what reviewer wants. You are not audible, sir. You are on mute.
Thank you, Rajesh sir, for including me. Sir, can you see my screen?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. You can go ahead, and we can listen to you also.
Sure. Speaking on what reviewer wants after Dr. Sabyasachi has presented is like coming to bat after Sachin Tendulkar has scored a century. But then, okay, I will try my best. So, well, one is when we want to write an article and we want the reviewer, that the reviewer should pass it, we have to understand is why we write an article. Well, it is scientific writing, which is different from journalism. So, the reviewer is not looking for flowery language. The reviewer is not looking for our command on English, or how much good phrases we know, or how things are colorful or interesting. The reviewer is basically looking at just the science. So it is a properly framed research question, an honestly done inquiry. The why, the what, the where, the whom, how long is what is important, because that is what gives us the scientific answer, and that is what is something that will convince the reviewer. And well, most reviewers are blind. So when we are speaking or giving a talk, people feel that the quality of presentation, the way they dress, the way they look, or the style of speaking, all of them become important. But when we are writing an article, well, it is going to be a completely masked article. The reviewer has absolutely no idea of our identity. So a properly conducted scientific inquiry will always find publishers, even if it is not well written or discussed, because if the reviewers are impressed with the work that we have done, the reviewers will give us comments to improve our working. But a flawed study in which the method section itself has major flaws is unlikely to be accepted. So an excellent icing cannot always disguise a half-baked cake. So we have to be very, very careful about the method, what we have done. And of course, why write? Because, well, today we have to publish or perish, at least in the academia. So when we are going it, I will just go on. I mean, this Professor Joshi has gone through, and Dr. Sabyasachi is the IMRD format of the paper. But a reviewer, when we are looking at it, again, the title has to be informative, catchy, something that the reviewer will want to go in. And the abstract, because many reviewers first look at the abstract. The abstract is a synopsis or a summary, and it should be a standalone thing. So an abstract cannot have references, and you cannot quote something else in the abstract. It is only our own study. And because it is the most read part of a paper, when we go through a journal, most people will first read the abstract and then decide whether they want to read the full paper or not. So in this, you should see to it that the abstract is written best. So generally, it is also the thing that is written last. We have written the entire paper, and then we write the abstract. So like this is the abstract of a study we had done comparing SICS with PECO. Now, when we are looking at a reviewer, in the first 3-4 lines, we have to put forth is why we are doing this, what we are trying to publish, why is it important, why is it worth doing in the first place, and we have to defend the model that we chose to do this study. Now, obviously, if it's a randomized control trial, a double mask trial, they are like the best, or a meta-analysis or a systemic review. But suppose it's just a simple case series or a case report, even then why we chose it? Perhaps it's rare, it's not something that is always seen. So all of that must come in the introduction. Again, we use background information only when needed. So it should be crisp, it should be relevant. You use only past tense because we are reporting what has been done. So we cannot say, yes, this will be found out, or this may come out later. So then the reviewer will say, okay, when it comes out, you come back to us, and that is the time when we will think of you. So in materials and methods, this is the most important part of the paper. This is the part on which the reviewer is basically going to decide, and the editor, as to whether this paper is going to get in or not. The other things, the results, the discussion, all flow out of the methods. So describe everything that you have used, each equipment, each chemical, each instrument, its make, also the type of study that we have done, whether it is a RCT, a case series, a cohort study, it's an in vitro study, a population-based study. And in today's world, there has to be a small para on ethical consideration, whether a proper ethics committee permission has been taken or not. If human subjects are involved, whether those subjects have been dealt with ethically. Once that is done, when we are writing the report, the result should be an objective report of the result. And whatever is the interpretation, we should save that for discussion. So in our opinion, we feel that, or according to X, Y, Z, all of them is not needed in the results. We summarized our findings in the text and we illustrate them. So if there are diagrams, if there are figures, they make it easier for the reviewer to understand. And if the reviewer is going to understand it easily, he or she is more likely to give a better grading to our paper. And then, of course, he or she knows that even the lay reader will be able to read it out. We have to point out a relevant observation. So perhaps in a FACO versus SICS study, out of the 400 surgeries, only one surgery had a nucleus drop in the FACO arm. But that is a very important observation. We shouldn't hide that. We shouldn't gloss over it. And we should provide the context, the question that we used to get our answer. So if we have used a questionnaire, then that questionnaire will have to be shown. If we are grading somebody on socio-economic scale, the scale on which we have grading it, that has to be shown. And of course, the data has to be analyzed. So the p-values, the confidence intervals, all of them have to be taken into consideration. Again, do not present the same data twice. So if it is there in the table or a flow chart, don't write it in the text. Do not discuss or interpret the result. Do not include raw data or intermediate calculations. Use past tense and number figures tables consecutively, each one of them properly titled, each with a caption or a heading. So it's easy for the reviewer to understand what is the data that is being shown. What does this data mean? Once we have done that, in the discussion, we have an interpretation of our results and support for all our conclusions. So how did this result come out? What does this result mean? The significance of the findings should be clearly described. Suppose the null hypothesis is not rejected and we say that there is no difference between the new technique and the old, or the new drug and the old. Even that is an important result. Interpret our data with appropriate depth. And we have to say whether the hypothesis is supported, rejected, or perhaps we cannot come to a decision because perhaps our sample size was small, or the follow-up was not long enough. Even that we have to understand. Finally, for the references, list all the literature that is cited in your paper. Ideally, only primary literature should be used. Generally, websites or lectures or oral talks should not be used. You use only recent references, not a 1947 reference to show our diligence, or only an appropriate one. Don't just cite a reference because it's your name in it or your boss's name in it, or it is from your own institute. And use, as far as possible, proper peer-reviewed index journals, not the Andaman and Nicobar Journal of Ophthalmology, to cite your references. Ideally, there should be no spelling mistakes or grammatical errors, because then it doesn't convey a good impression. Stay focused on the research topic of the paper. All the present tense for accepted facts, like the grass is green, past tense for all the reported ones. Avoid informal wording, slangs, superlatives, acronyms. Avoid superfluous pictures. And finally, reviewers are not our enemies. Though, of course, we have to get past the reviewers to get our paper accepted. So when reviewers give us very scathing suggestions, very, nasty reviews, well, we should take them positively. They are done to improve our paper so that we can improve our work and present it to a next journal. So once more, I would like to thank Professor Rajesh Joshi for giving me this opportunity. He is always kind and gives me that. And thank you for your patient audience.
Thank you so much, sir, for your enlightening on what reviewer wants. In fact, it wasn't a boring one. It was really enlightening. And it's always a pleasure to have you. You keep on adding more things. And once we have reviewer comments, usually the article comes for revision or rejection or acceptance. But I have never seen, in fact, in my case, that article being accepted without any revision. Usually you have a revision, maybe a small one, major one, or minor one, and then the article gets accepted. Here I welcome Dr. Sunil Morekar, and he wants to speak at last. So I will go with my presentation and share the screen. Dealing with rejection. In fact, it's always difficult and painful if you have a rejection, because you have spent almost a year in writing or 6 months in writing the article, and you have almost spent 2 to 3 years in completion of your work, and then you face rejection. Now, how to avoid rejection? You can avoid rejection by not submitting only, or you have a lot of data, but it's of no use. You just make it into an article and you don't submit it. So by not submitting rejection and by not submitting an article, you avoid rejection. Rejection, it's a part of research or writing a research paper. When I went through one of the published article on rejection, there is almost 62% of PubMed papers have been rejected once. So we are not alone. When I submitted my first paper to IJO, I think, and it was rejected in 1 or 2 days only. Of course, then I realized that how poorly it was written. Well-known rejection from the history. In fact, you are not alone. Well-known articles. Krebs cycle, who do not know Krebs cycle? That article on Krebs cycle by Heinz was rejected. But of course, it was later on published. Article on nuclear magnetic resonance by Nobel Prize winner in chemistry, Richard Ernst, was rejected twice before its publication in the Review of Scientific Instrument. So many well-known articles are rejected and then they get published. Rejection serves two purposes. It proves you have written up your work. It may provide good constructive criticism used to write up a better manuscript. If you are a writer and if you have started writing, there is a vast difference between what you have written previously and what you are writing right now. So that is how you can differentiate yourself. Types of rejection. It comes directly within 24 hours that your article is rejected for so much reason of your article do not fit into our subject, or there are various reasons for that. So at the editorial review only your article is rejected. The article goes to peer reviewer and there is a lot of criticism, and similar article was there in PubMed or other indexing agencies and your article is rejected. So we call this as a criticism rejection, near miss rejection. The article was near to acceptance, means you feel that your article is almost will get accepted, and then you get email from editor that your article is rejected because of such and such reasons. How commonly articles are rejected? Very common. 69% of papers would have been rejected at least once. Top journals have high rejection rate. Of course, number of articles submitted to top journals are also high. Chargeable journals have low rejection rate. PubMed index journals have high rejection rate. Top 11 reasons for rejection. There is absence of message, or there is very old message which have been written by many authors and you are just writing same thing. So absence of message, lack of originality, poor methodology. As Dr. Parikshit Gopte has just told us that if your methodology is poor, your article is likely to be rejected. Non-relevant journals, over interpretation of the results. Now most of the journals They don't accept case reports, except they are very new, very recent one, and there is something new message. Grammar and spelling mistakes, data is inaccurate, poor statistics. Your statistics should be good. At least you should have basic knowledge about statistics. Insufficient data, unsatisfactory tables and illustration, and of course, plagiarism. How to handle rejection? Once you receive rejection letter, read it properly, understand the decision, type of rejection, and respond accordingly. If it gets rejected in one journal, you have a time, you have an opportunity to improve your article. Even if you cannot resubmit in the same journal, it will help you improve the manuscript for another journal. Handling rejection, comments. Paper is not acceptable in its present format. Revise and resubmit. If the journal gives an opportunity, submit. If the journals do not give any opportunity to resubmit, then you have to find out some another journal. Second comment, the paper did not get high enough priority. Submit somewhere else, because your journal is not going, your journal where your article have submitted will not accept it. The study is interesting, but too preliminary. So revise and resubmit a new article or submit somewhere else. The work is more appropriate for specialized journals. Submit somewhere else. Some of the journals, like suppose you are submitting an article on cataract to a retina journal, it is likely to get rejected. So submit your article to a journal wherein it will carry your proper value. The study lacks important controls, so additional experiments is needed for validation. Coping with rejection, be positive, have a perseverance, and keep writing. Prevention better than cure. Choose journal carefully. Scope, visibility, importance of work done. Read carefully instructions to authors and follow them. Ask colleague to critically assess the paper. Usually, if your junior has written it, you can yourself critically assess it and make any corrections. Rules for replying to referee's comment to avoid rejection. Respond completely. Respond politely. Use proper language for response of comments. Respond with evidence and respond promptly. Some journals, they give some time, usually 7 days or 14 days. And then your paper goes in rejection. Honesty is essential. Be honest about data analysis, additional data collection, references. Proper referencing is very important. Every journal has their reference style, so follow that style of referencing. Conflict of interest. Always disclose the conflict of interest. Always disclose the foreign collaboration and acknowledgement. So that is all from my side. Thank you for patience listening. Now next is
Rajesh. Good
Yeah,
evening,
good evening,
Parikshit sir.
madam.
Good evening, everybody.
Good evening, madam.
Hi, Dr. Sabyasachi. Good evening,
Hi,
Sunil.
ma'am. Good evening.
Sorry to interrupt you. Hi, Viral.
Good evening,
Sir,
madam.
please
Good
go
evening,
on.
ma'am. No, ma'am. Good
Nice
to see you also.
Nice to see Sabya not singing, but I'm waiting for you singing too.
And good to see you also, ma'am.
Thank you so much, madam.
Thank you.
How are you,
Thank
madam?
you. All good. Hi, Parikshit bhai. Sorry
Hi,
for the
hi.
interruption.
अरे नहीं मैम इंटरप्शन क्या है यू मस्ट इंटरप्ट इन ईच हॉल एवरी टाइम तो लोग भी डर के रहते हैं कि नहीं चेयरमैन साइंटिफिक कमिटी देख रहे हैं करके
Yes. Madam, you are
Rajesh
on.
bhai, please continue. Please continue. Sorry
Yes,
for the
ma'am.
interruption.
Thank you so much, madam. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you,
Thank
ma'am.
you, everybody, for the
opportunity.
great. And I am hoping Rajesh with Parikshit bhai should continue, and with this great team, I think next year there will be more research and publications with you all together.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, madam. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you.
Now I request Dr. Sunil Morekar sir to deliver his talk on how to write a research paper.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Can you see
We
my
can
slides?
see your
in there?
slides also.
Yeah.
Make it a full screen.
Is it visible now? Full
Yes,
screen?
yes.
Okay.
Yes, sir, you can.
Thank you very
It
much.
is completely
Thank you
visible.
for coming in here. Thank you, Parikshit Saab and Rajesh Joshi Saab, for such a brilliant session, for planning this in the first place.
So all thanks to Dr. Rajesh Joshi.
Thank you so much, sir, for the opportunity. I think Sunil sir's internet is giving him problem.
Talk so far. I will just.
Yes, sir. I think he has a problem with his internet.
So can you present his talk if he has one?
In fact, his talk, I don't have his talk. I will just call him. What is the problem? I think he is trying to connect to the internet. In between, if any queries, in fact, in the chat box, there are no queries. We'll just highlight on selecting the journal because your talk was very informative.
Basically, for the novice or the beginners, it is very important to distinguish between a predatory journal and a quality journal.
Yes, definitely.
Now there are dime a dozen predatory journals. Their whole time business. It's a whole big industry.
Yes.
They will just send phishing mails and SMSs and whatnot, and you take the bet, and they will capture you. So
Yes.
they will have to send any study, and because of peer pressure or because of your academic in your medical, if you are attached to institutions or medical colleges, you require publications, and you fall prey to such predatory journals. So you should be beware of email solicitations. Email, if you get regarding send your manuscripts or abstracts and all that, and immediately within 1 or 2 days you get acceptance, and then after 7 days they ask you to pay some money for publications, and there is no hard copy and just some obscure link they give that we have published your journal, you can quote it there and there. So basically the newcomers or those who are new in the field in writing papers, they should be very of this kind of journals. Also journals published by our societies like All India Ophthalmic Society or MOS or specialty societies, they are more credible and carry more weightage as far as your indexing is concerned. So you should always strive to publish there, but it's not so easy to get published in such reputed and well established journals. So you have to begin somewhere. So you can always look for some upcoming journals which have got some scope for letting you publish. So it's a finance. You have to sift through whether it's matching your expectations or not, or whether it is just a rubbish magazine or a rubbish journal.
Yeah, in fact, if you see emails from, yes, Sunil Morikar sir has
Yes.
joined.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. You can share
sorry.
your.
Yeah, can I share my screen again? I'm very
Yes,
sorry.
sir. Definitely.
Sorry, something wrong with my side. So is my screen visible?
Yes, we can see the disclosure.
Okay. So my disclosures are nil. Am I audible? Yeah.
Yes, yes, yes.
Okay. So my disclosures are nil. So I'll quote Archibald Lemon Cochrane, that in publishing papers, I have inevitably adopted that standard MRC style of writing which passes for scientific English. It's accurate, meticulous, and almost bias-proof. The only drawback is that I find it almost unreadable. So I have realized that there are times when I have found even my articles unreadable for even myself, not just my prescriptions, even my articles. So that was again, and
I think there is a problem with internet. Yes, what I was telling about publication in the journal. Many times you get email from these journals, and if you see at the end of the email, they usually write down coordinator to editor. If you see such type of message, coordinator to editor, usually it conveys that the journal is predated, and you will be get trapped once you submit the article. They will say you that we will give you discount and all, but amount of discount which they will give, they will not disclose it, and at the end you end up paying a huge amount. So you should be aware of such type of journals and never fall prey of these journals. And if the journal at the outset only asks you, yes, I think he has rejoined.
I think
yeah,
we
can
should,
you hear me?
yeah, sir.
Yes, sir, we can hear you.
I think
I'm sorry, something wrong. I'll just go back to the slide. Can you see my slides?
yes,
Yes,
sir.
yes.
Okay, so I think this internet is telling me to finish this very fast. So I will go through the slides fast. So I have to assess my science before I write it. Is my study original? How are the subjects recruited? Is the study design sensible? Was systematic bias avoided? Is there a sample size calculation? Is there statistical analysis appropriate? And is the study ethical? So in finding out whether my study is original, a trial reports efficacy of steroids. Is the study original, unoriginal, necessary, unnecessary? So I think this is quite unnecessary. So we realize that we start broadly and we narrow down in our aims and objectives, state the aims and the importance. We cite thoroughly all the things that have been reported in literature, but not excessively. We avoid giving too many citations for one point, clearly state your hypothesis or research question, and consider giving an overview of the paper. Keep it short, you show, but you don't tell, and don't worry your readers in detail, and check the journal requirements. A study may not be original, but needs to add to existing literature. So the first example I said, study of steroids in optic neuritis. It may not be original, but if it adds something to literature in terms of a different subgroup or something else like that, that is what is important. So does this new research add to literature in any ways is what we have to be answering, whether it is bigger, longer, or more substantial, whether it is methodologically more rigorous. There was an earlier study, but that was not methodologically rigorous. Ours is. Will numerical results and other data add significantly to another meta-analysis that somebody will do? Is the population studied different? Is the clinical issue examined of sufficient importance, or is it controversial? How are the subjects recruited? So here is an example. A trial to evaluate the efficacy of counseling to improve compliance to medication excludes all people who are not graduates. So there is a bias here. So we have excluded people who are not graduates. So this is not the way we do the study. So before I submit it, I have to check all these points so that the reviewer doesn't get angry and point out these questions to us, as Dr. Rajesh pointed out. So is there a problem? Yes. Here. So there is a bias here. How are the subjects recruited is something that who was included, who was excluded, why were they excluded, were the subjects studied under real life circumstances, was the study design sensible? So in order to compare the efficacy of two anti-glaucoma drugs, a group of patients currently being treated with second drug are compared to those that were treated with the first drug in the past. The study design is acceptable, suboptimal, will do as a preliminary study. So here we know that this might do as a preliminary study. So you have to find out the research question and the study design. So I'm summing up everything that everybody has said. So you do study two surgical procedures. The study design will be randomized control trial. If you evaluate a diagnostic, so this is what you check before you submit your article. Diagnostic test is being evaluated, you will do a cross-sectional study. Prognosis is being evaluated, you will do a longitudinal cohort study. Causation is evaluated, you will do a case control and case report. Did I make efforts to minimize bias? A survey is done to find out awareness about glaucoma in people who are exiting. So if they're exiting and we're trying to find out awareness, they're obviously being aware. So this is not something that will tell you the real awareness in population. So what is the problem? There is a selection bias. We have had a bias in the selection. So there are various examples. So I will see other examples here. Sexual practices amongst adolescents gets only a 20%. There is a selection bias. There's only 20% response. So liver cancers controls are patients admitted to a hospital trauma ward. Again, there is a problem. So the problem here is selection bias. So we have a lot of these biases in our papers. We have to find out these biases and tell the author. So while we are writing the article, we have to write down that what is the source of the bias and how we have minimized the source of the bias. So can there be another explanation for this? This is information bias. So a case control study determining causes of congenital abnormalities report a much higher use of paracetamol in these cases. So here we ask them paracetamol, paracetamol. Here we are asking questions, leading questions, and then leads to our information bias. So we want to find out whether there was correct randomization done, whether there was something in which absence of blinding might cause a bias. So a laparoscopic and the other with an open cholecystectomy, ask them, recovery jaldi ho gaya tha. Obviously the patient is going to say recovery jaldi ho gaya because there was absence of blinding. Now, so then we want to see in our study with the sample size calculation has been done properly. So we find out whether there are small sample size underpowered and type 2 errors. So we can also lower the power to find out that lower the power, greater the chance of committing a type 2 error. So we want to find out that if no power calculation method is mentioned in our study, then you can do a reverse power calculation from the mentioned sample size. This is what the reviewer is going to do. So we might as well do it for ourselves. Then we find out if the statistical analysis is proper. And we have heard about the statistical analysis and found out that statistical analysis p-value is not given. That is a problem. Sometimes the improper randomization can give rise to problems. And we also find out that the baseline of both the treatments groups must be appropriately compared. There should be no differences between the randomization between the groups. So I have two groups which are studying. Pehle se there is a problem and there is a difference between the groups. That will be wrong. So our statistical analysis, is this correct? Compared mean IOP following anti-glaucoma test by a Friedman test. Is this correct, incorrect, suspicious? This is suspicious. Why suddenly somebody using a Friedman test? So you compare the test and find out whether you have applied the right test. So before submitting the paper, we have to write down whether we have concluded with the right parametric test. Independent means parametric student t-test or Mann-Whitney test if it is non-parametric. Compare means from paired samples. It is paired t-test or Wilkinson match pair if it is non-parametric. Compare 3 or more means it will be ANOVA. It cannot do a paired t. 3 means it is variance. If it is non-parametric, you will do Kruskal-Wallis. Compare proportion, chi-square test. Compare proportions from paired sample, McNemar's test. Compare 2 continuous variation, Pearson's and Spearman's. So you find out whether your statistical tests which you have done are right or wrong. So this is a hazard of a subgroup analysis. So we do drug A versus drug B, and then we find that 44 is a 45 may difference. So I will show that difference that my drug is better. So you don't do a subgroup analysis. At the end, if you're going to do a subgroup analysis, your statement should say that right in the beginning. So we talk about CI also. If there is a wide CI, there is a lack of precision. So confidence intervals in our papers, we should see whether this is being written rightly or not. So I look at what all different parts of the statistics which I have done, and use of non-standard tests should arouse suspicion, and we should realize that my statistician has done something wrong. I will ask my statistician and do the things, and whether my analysis is by intent to treat or not, it is not by intent to treat. Again, that will incite suspiciousness in the reviewer's mind. So I should find it out myself, find out the confidence intervals, and have measures like NNT, relative risks, and other things. And then finally, I want to find out whether the conclusion of my study is justifiable. So I'll end this. Is my conclusion based on the study results, or am I just making sweeping statements? Have the possibilities of type 1 and type 2 errors been seen? Differentiate between clinical and statistical significance? Have we outlined limitations? So when we do all this and then we submit our papers, by finding out whether our conclusions are justifiable. So these are just examples. I'm just going to run by this. And then finally, we say that my study says that there is causation. So we have to find out whether the Hill's criteria of causations are applied to, let's say, in example, subluxation. So you have to have the strength, you have to have consistency, temporal sequence, dose response, higher the dose, higher the effect, experimental evidence, biological plausibility, coherence, and analogy. So these are 9 things which in details we can see in our study, whether it is just an association or is it causal. So Bradford Hill's criteria should be fulfilled. And then finally, we look at the ethics of it. And for prevention of perinatal HIV, this is an unethical study. So is my study ethical? Have I found an ethical committee approval and ethical committee and then sought its approval? And if I have not taken an approval, is my study been granted waiver for ethics committee submission because it is something that does not need an ethics committee approval? Is the use of placebo justified? Informed consents are taken or not? Ethical things are done. And then we assess our presentation. How is my presentation? Is the clarity of presentation there? A logical flow of thought. So I started with what are the means and things, what is there in literature, what is missing in literature, what am I adding in literature, then what are my research questions, then what have I done for my research questions, the methodology, study design is proper or not, then whether I have applied the right statistical sample size, then I have applied the right statistics, and then I am doing the conclusion properly. And you avoid repetitions, and proper literature, grammar, spellings and abbreviations have to be seen, tables, figures and references have to be seen. So here is one example. Tables and figures tell the story. Tables provide the data. Now you check balance, appropriateness, completeness about the tables and frequency. So this is one table. So this says everything. So you need not repeat all of this again in your text. So this is another wonderful table in which you can just see everything here. You need not repeat everything. This is a table which distribution of vision at 1 year after PRP. So these are visualizations which make you see things better rather than just text and words. Instead of that, if I have a figure like that which talks like this so much instead of those tables, I don't make sense. So use figures and tables. 3 figures is equal to 102 text words, and nobody's going to read your text words. People are going to read your figures. This is another table in which the complete thing which you could write in so many paragraphs is just written in 50 words in one single table. So you find it out. Figures, and what you're pointing, and you find out something and you point that there in a figure. So these are principles, Clark and Mayer principles. You talk about redundancy. You can't have the same figure and saying the same thing again in words. So there should be no repetition. and the demographics should be kept properly, and the references should be for validity and for credit. And you check for recentness, appropriate. This is something that already Dr. Rajesh and Parikshit Saab has spoken about. And these are the references in IGO and audit, which was done up to 2004 till we were there. And we realized that publication of the references in terms of citation years. And this is something that somebody else will do also. So majority more than 12 years. This was in 2004. This is not the recent one. So this is something that somebody is going to do an audit. So you do find out that you have to make sure that when an audit is run, your paper doesn't fall into a bad audit. And you don't have unnecessary references, or you're not self-citing yourself so much. So the overall presentation title is the most read and the most indicative, and it should be attractive. The abstract should be the most complete, and it is the most distributed part, and most of the people read only the abstract. Your style should be right. In terms of styles, proper word in proper place. The goal is to create an easily readable paper. There should be clarity, brevity, and there should be flow. So if you're clear, you'll be brief, and there will be a flow in between paragraphs. According to Witcher and colleagues, the dry eye area, most fraud with misinterpretation, consent. So what is this? I mean, dry eye areas, and also this is not clarity. Now, this is such a huge statement which is going in, it's too long, right? So brevity, 33 words, can we put it in 23 words like that, right? So 24 words, 18 words. So these are brief, this thing. The sentence flow should be nice. Like this is an example. Paragraph flow should be following each other. So you write one paragraph and then you write the next paragraph, which follows in sense. And repetition should not be there. Like I'm repeating myself now. Introduction, discussion, the things which are said in the introduction should not be repeated in the discussion. The results should be nicely put like this. And in the discussion, you talk about the results and not talk about what you have already spoken in the this thing. So useful references of how to write a paper are the same references for which how to do a good peer review. So do the peer review training package. You will know how to write your own paper. A medical paper should be like a lady's dress, short enough to be interesting, but long enough to cover the whole subject. So these are some of the things that we have done. So all of you can do any of these courses, and which will help you to write the papers. So these are right from Harvard to Mayo to all of them. And any of these courses you do, and you will be able to do your writing very well. I hope I did cover the thing, and I gave a complete gist of all the things. Is that right, Rajesh?
Yes, sir. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for covering it so nicely. In fact, we have overshoot the time also. I thank MOS for giving this opportunity. And I thank Parikshit sir, Morekar sir, Sabyasachi, Dr. Viral for highlighting on all the aspects of writing and research methodology. So it's important to publish and flourish. Thank you so much for joining, and I hope we will repeat same course in the next year also. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. It was wonderful.
Thank you.
And I'm very
Thank
sorry.
you, sir. Thank you.
Very sorry.
No. Thank you, Dr. Rajesh. And yeah.
Thank you, sir.
We should do it. And I think we should do something slightly new.
Next time we'll do physical. Nice.
Yeah.